61 pounds of tomatoes. That is the number my wife Karen wrote in the harvest log last September from just two plants growing in one raised bed in my Midwest backyard. 3 summers ago, that same bed, the same variety, the same sun gave me barely 15 pounds, and the plants looked beautiful. Big, deep green, bushy tomato plants loaded with yellow flowers and almost nothing hanging on the vine. I did not change my fertilizer. I did not buy some special seed. I did not add a single square foot of garden space. I changed how I water. And here is the part that surprises everybody. I now water my tomatoes less often than almost any gardener I know. Twice a week in a normal stretch. Sometimes less. Stay with me all the way to the end because the reason watering less often gives you more fruit has nothing to do with saving water. It comes down to one specific thing the roots are doing in the days in between waterings. And once you understand it, you will never stand out there with the hose every single evening again. I'm Steve Calloway. I've been growing food in the same backyard for more than 20 years, and for most of those years I've run side-by-side test beds and written down what actually happened. My first garden was a jungle of green that gave me about a dozen tomatoes all summer. Karen keeps the harvest log with me now, and these days our problem is giving tomatoes away fast enough. Now let me guess how your summer's going, because I lived it for years. You planted good tomatoes back in May. You water them almost every evening, standing in the garden with the hose after supper, giving each plant a nice drink. And the plants look wonderful, tall, green, thick with leaves. But it is late July and you have a handful of fruit, flowers that turn pale and drop off, and maybe a couple tomatoes with ugly black bottoms. So you do what I did in my first garden. You feed them more, and the plants get even bigger and even greener, and you get even less fruit. That evening, sprinkle is one of the hardest habits to break in gardening because it feels like care. But a light watering only wets the top 2 or 3 inches of soil, only the top 2 or 3 inches. By noon the next day, in July heat, that water is gone. Your plant is living its whole life on a shallow, unreliable water supply, swinging from soaked to bone dry every single day. And a tomato plant that feels unstable does one thing very reliably. It protects itself instead of making fruit for you. It drops flowers, it pours its energy into leaves. Same space, same effort, completely different result. Now hold on to that idea about the top 3 inches of soil, because when we get to the end and I show you what the roots are doing between deep waterings, the whole thing snaps into place. Before we go step by step, let me tell you where all of this comes from. Everything I'm showing you today is one piece of a bigger system, and I wrote the whole thing down, day by day, in a book called Steve's 30-Day Maximum Yield Protocol. It is the exact 30-day system I follow in my own backyard to roughly double what every plant produces, written for home gardeners who want significantly more food from the space they already have. No extra square footage, no expensive equipment, and it works in raised beds, in-ground plots, and containers. Inside is the day-by-day protocol from soil preparation through harvest, the Big 7 yield killers for finding what is holding your garden back, feeding for fruit instead of foliage, and the strategic pruning that feels wrong but multiplies production. It is 115 pages, and right now it is $17, marked down from $47. One good tomato plant pays that back before August. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up, give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you're watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time, there is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. All right, grab your coffee and come out to the garden with me, and let's fix your watering for good. First, let's make certain this is actually your problem, because a tomato plant tells on itself if you know what to look for. Walk out to your plant this afternoon and check 4 things. 1, look at the flowers. If you see little yellow blossoms turning pale and dropping off the stem without ever forming fruit, that is called blossom drop. And in a home garden, water stress is the #1 cause of it. 2, look at the leaves around 3 or 4 in the afternoon in the worst of the heat. If the leaves roll up along their edges and then relax again by evening, your plant is running short on water in the middle of the day. 3, look at the fruit you do have. If tomatoes split, and crack open right after a rain or a heavy watering, the plant went from too dry to too wet too fast, and the inside of the fruit grew quicker than the skin could stretch. And 4, the ugly one. Turn a tomato over and look at the bottom. If you see a flat, leathery, dark brown or black patch on the bottom end, that is blossom end rot. It looks like a disease. It is not a disease, there is no bug to spray and no fungus to treat. It is a calcium problem inside the fruit, and in nearly every backyard I've ever looked at. The calcium is already sitting right there in the soil. The water is what fails. Remember that, because calcium is going to come back up in a big way before we are done. So how much water does a tomato plant actually need? Here is the number, and I want you to hold on to it. A tomato in the ground needs about 1 to 2 inches of water per week. 1 to 2 inches total, and that count includes rain. For a full-grown plant, that works out to somewhere around 4 to 5 gallons of water per week, not per day, per week. And I tested this against my old daily habit in side-by-side beds. Same soil, same variety, and the plants getting less frequent water outproduced the daily ones by a wide margin every single year. The delivery matters as much as the amount. Instead of 7 small drinks, you give the plant 2 big ones. I water deep twice a week in a normal stretch. When we hit a dry spell with afternoons pushing 95 degrees, I go to 3 times a week. That is the entire schedule. 2 deep waterings a week, roughly 2 to 2.5 gallons per plant each time. Write those numbers on a scrap of paper and stick it by the back door if you need to. 2 waterings, 2 gallons and a bit each time. Now let me show you exactly how I do a deep watering, because deep is the word that changes everything. The cheapest way is a 5-gallon bucket from the hardware store, about $5. Drill 2 small holes near the bottom edge, about the width of a pencil lead. Set the bucket beside your plant, fill it half full. Then walk away. The water seeps out slowly over 20 or 30 minutes, and every drop sinks straight down instead of running off. If you would rather use the hose, that works too. Turn the faucet down to a slow trickle, about the thickness of a pencil. Lay the hose end at the base of the plant. Leave it there for 15 to 20 minutes per plant. Take your time with this. There is no rush. And slow is the whole point. What you're after is moisture a full 12 inches down into the soil. 12 inches. A quick sprinkle never gets past 3. So to gather that up, deep watering is simple. Slow delivery. At the base, 20 minutes or so, twice a week. That is the backbone of the system. Which brings us to where the water goes, because this part costs gardeners a lot of fruit too. Water the soil, never the leaves. I see folks standing in the yard waving the hose over the whole plant like they're rinsing a car, and every wet leaf is an invitation. Tomato leaves that stay wet, especially overnight, are exactly how early blight gets started. That is the fungus that shows up as brown spots with little rings on your lower leaves and then climbs the plant week by week. Keep the foliage dry, and you shut the front door on it. Point the water at the base of the stem, right at the dirt, and nowhere else. A soaker hose laid along the row does this beautifully if you want to make it even easier. And I will come back to what is happening underneath that soil between waterings. That is the part I promised you at the start, and we're getting closer to it. Now, when to water? Morning. Somewhere between 6 and 9 before the heat builds. There are 2 reasons, and they are both simple. First, the plant fills up on water ahead of the hottest part of the day, so by the time that afternoon sun is beating down on the garden, the tank is already full. Second, anything that splashes onto a leaf by accident dries off quickly in the morning sun. If you water in the evening, the plant sits damp all night in the cool air, and that is fungus weather. I know evenings are when a lot of us have the time. If evening is truly your only window, then water the soil only, low and slow at the base, and keep every drop off the leaves. But if you can swing it, morning wins, and it is not close. Here is where I want you to throw away the calendar, though, because the best gardeners I know do not water on a schedule at all. They water when the soil asks for it, and the soil will tell you plainly. My favorite tool for this costs nothing because it is already in your junk drawer. A plain 8-inch screwdriver. Push it straight down into the soil beside your plant. If it slides in easy, the soil is moist down deep and the plant is fine, so leave the hose wound up. If you have to force it or it stops short, the ground is drying out and it is time for a deep watering. You can also use your finger. Push it 2 inches into the soil near the plant if the top 2 inches are dry, but it feels cool and damp below that, you're right on time. Do this little check every couple of days. It takes 10 seconds and it beats any schedule anybody could hand you, including mine, because your soil and your weather are yours. The next piece is the one that makes the whole system almost automatic, and that is mulch. After your soil has warmed up in June, spread a 3-inch layer of mulch around every tomato plant. 3 inches all the way around, kept a couple of inches back from the stem itself. Clean straw works, shredded leaves work, dry grass clippings work, as long as the lawn was never treated with weed killer. Here is what that 3-inch blanket does. It slows evaporation way down, so the deep watering you gave the plant on Monday is still there on Thursday. It keeps the soil temperature steady instead of baking the top layer every afternoon. And it stops rain from splashing soil up onto the lower leaves, which is one more door closed on disease. In my test beds, the mulched row held even moisture for days longer than the bare row right beside it. Same water, same soil. If you do nothing else from this video besides deep watering and a 3-inch mulch, you will already see a different plant by August. A quick word for those of you growing in containers and raised beds, because the rules bend a little there. Raised beds drain faster than open ground, so check them with a screwdriver more often and expect to water a bit more frequently in high summer. Containers are a different animal entirely. A tomato in a pot has no deep soil to reach into, so in August heat, a big container plant may genuinely need water every day. That is fine. The principle stays the same. When you water a container, water it deep, slowly, until you see water running out the drainage holes at the bottom. Then stop and do not water again until the top 2 inches are dry, and give tomatoes a real pot. 5 gallons is the bare minimum, and a 15-gallon container will outproduce it every time, simply because it holds more moisture between drinks. Now remember that black leathery patch on the bottom of the fruit, blossom, and rot? Here is why steady watering cures it when no spray ever will. Calcium does not float around inside a plant looking for work. Calcium can only move where the water moves. The plant pulls water up from the roots, out through the leaves, and calcium rides along in that stream. And the fruit is last in line for it, so when your soil swings from soaked to bone dry, the stream stutters, and the fruit gets shorted on calcium even though the soil is full of it. The result is that rotten-looking bottom. The same swings are what split your tomatoes after a rain. The plant gulps water, the fruit swells overnight, and the skin gives out. Even moisture, deep watering, plus that 3-inch mulch solves both problems at the source. The garden doesn't lie. It rewards the system, not the guesswork. And that sits right next door to the big answer I promised you at the start. Let's get to it. Here is the reason watering less often gives you more tomatoes. And it is all about what the roots do in the days between waterings. Roots grow toward water. That is their whole job. They follow moisture wherever it lives. So think about what the daily evening sprinkle trains them to do. All the moisture sits in the top 3 inches of soil, so that is where the roots stay. And the top 3 inches is the worst neighbourhood in the entire garden. It is the layer that bakes to over 100 degrees on a July afternoon, the layer that dries out by lunchtime, the layer that swings hot and cold, wet and dry every single day. A plant with its roots trapped up there spends the whole season on a knife's edge, and a stressed tomato plant does not make fruit. It drops its blossoms and hunkers down because fruit is expensive and survival comes first. Now flip it. When you water deep and then wait, the top of the soil dries out between waterings, but the moisture a foot down is still there, so the roots chase it. Day by day, in that quiet stretch between your Monday watering and your Thursday watering, the roots are driving downward 8 inches, 12 inches, and deeper into soil that stays cool and evenly damp no matter what the afternoon sun is doing up top. A plant anchored down there never panics. It drinks steadily through the hottest week of the summer, holds every blossom, and along the way, those deep roots find nutrients the shallow ones never touched. The days you were not watering were never neglect. They were the days the plant was building the root system that fills the vine. That leafy green plant on one side and that loaded plant on the other are the same plant. The only difference is where you taught the roots to live. And that is exactly the kind of thing my whole protocol is built on. Tested in my own beds, cheap to do, and written out day by day so you can just follow along. Steve's 30-day maximum yield protocol walks you from soil preparation through harvest, one day at a time. And watering is only one of the big 7 yield killers it helps you find and fix. It is $17, down from $47, which is less than one trip to the garden centre for products that will not move the needle half as far as this system does. Planting season does not wait, so the sooner you start, the more of this summer it pays you back. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up, give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you're watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time, there is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. So that is the system that took me from 15 pounds to 61 pounds in the same raised bed. Deep water twice a week at the base, in the morning, checked with a screwdriver, tucked under 3 inches of mulch. If you run this test in your own beds, come back and tell me the before and after. I read every single one. Next time, I'm going to show you the one pruning cut that feels like you're hurting your tomato plant, and why in my side-by-side beds, the pruned plant outproduced the wild one by more than 20 pounds. Get out there and get your hands dirty, and I'll see you in the garden.